Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our On Point podcast. I'm Mark McKee, the head of Viewpoint School, and today we're diving into our College Conversations series. The goal of these episodes is to give you valuable insight from our college counselors here at Viewpoint about the changes that parents and students can expect as they face the college admissions journey. Today, I'm here with Rhody Davis, our Director of College Counseling. Rhody has been at Viewpoint for 15 years and is an industry leader as a subject matter expert for more than double that time. Rhody, thank you for indulging my podcast habit, and thank you for joining us here today.
My pleasure.
So, Rhody, today we're going to talk about some of the trends that we're seeing right now. I love podcasts because, we're always driven by something that's been written out in the news. And today, that thing that's been written out in the news is, of course, your article in our most recent edition of Viewpoint Magazine, right. That one with belonging on the cover. And so this is part of an ongoing series, but I'm eager to dive into the first conversation. That article summarized some of the trends that we're seeing in college admissions, and I'm sure that more changes have come to light even since then. Tell us what sparked this piece.
Well, one of the things that makes college counseling so exciting, really, to me, and one of the reasons why I've been in this work for so many years is it's so dynamic. It's changing so much every year, and especially in the last couple of years, the changes have been hugely dramatic. So, I think, as people enter into the process, my target for this is really junior parents, sophomore and junior parents, maybe even senior parents a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important to kind of highlight what's new, what's different, because some people have had kids who've gone through it before, and there's new changes even in the last couple of years. So I think it's good to kind of highlight what's new and what's different. Maybe I should move this.
I know I've been teaching since about 1990. How long have you been working in college counseling?
Well, my first job was way back in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. I was an assistant in the college counseling office at the Kincaid School in Houston. And this was during the era of everyone filled out either with a typewriter or by hand their college applications. And we Xeroxed the transcripts. I can remember typing up the transcripts. I mean, we used typewriters.
I remember that as a student in the 80s. I remember that as a teacher filling out college recommendations for my students in the 90s. And I remember the college counseling office at that school where I taught being just a sea of paper.
Exactly. Yeah, files. We used to file everyone's application in this big file cabinet, and liquid paper. Everyone had a bunch of liquid paper to correct their corrections, and it was interesting because technology, which is a game changer for pretty much every aspect of our life, that changed college admission processes in a huge way. But before the Common Application, which was on the computer, everyone would do an application for that particular school. And one of the great benefits to that was that these applicant pools weren't flooded with thousands and thousands of applications. So, students had to be really thoughtful about, the 8 to 10 applications that they did because it took so long to do them by hand or to type them. So I think one of the biggest changes in college admission and college counseling is the advent of technology and online applications.
It's amazing. And I know that was one of the trends that you wrote about in your article. As I think about that, sure, if I applied to 5 schools, I think I filed 3 independent paper applications. I licked 3 envelopes.
Yeah.
And then the UCs, okay, I could get away with 1 envelope there, I think. And I I could check 2 boxes on the same form. But the 90s saw the Common App, saw the advent of the internet, mm-hmm. and then in the early 2000s, we saw what that's done to the numbers of college applications. You wrote a little bit about the use of artificial intelligence and
mm-hmm.
ChatGPT. What's the influence of ChatGPT in the college admissions, college counseling space?
Oh my gosh. I think we'll see how it impacts things this year. I think really it's hard to know how much students really used it this year in the process. I do know that, like, I attended a conference, the College Board conference earlier this fall, and there was a lot of talk about AI and generative AI. And, you know, one of the big takeaways for me is that we have to embrace this. This is not going anywhere. We have to teach kids how to use it. We have to provide some guardrails for its use. I think in the college process, like, you know, Michael Horn and Jeff Salingo, who I know you listen to, great like journalists and writers about higher ed. They talked about, in a podcast a couple of months ago, they talked about AI, using AI as a thought partner. And I really like how that is framed, in that this isn't something that is going to, you know, talk for you, but
Right.
it's some like a partner, an idea sharing partner. I can see students using it to maybe do college research. I can see like the use of it as maybe helping generate ideas for essays. There was actually a college counselor, a guy named Jeff Neal, who works at an international school, who is kind of the college counseling leader in AI and talking about AI. And he has a process by which he wrote his college recommendations using AI. So I think that and one of the things he said, which is so interesting, I keep coming back to this, is like, he said, AI might not take your job, but someone who knows how to use it productively might take your job.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I think about our Viewpoint students, and you know, they're both they're smart, sophisticated users of technology. I can't really imagine any of them just using AI to replace their work on their college applications, because they're much too intent, right? I mean, you know, when GPT first came out a year ago, one of the first things that we did was say, oh, write me a sample college application from a junior about a community outreach trip to Costa Rica, and it produced a really boring essay from a really imaginary junior, right?
Right.
And I can't imagine our students doing that, but there might be smart ways for them to use it.
Right. I mean, I think our advice is always going to be, you need to highlight who you are, what makes you unique. And that's not something that you're going to be able to get through an AI, feed. And I think there's a way to use AI to help maybe fine tune an idea or take you into a new direction with some, ideas that you're not sure how to address. So I think there's a way to use it that is going to maintain your authentic voice, which is really the key in an application, and also maybe be another tool. And I could also see kids feeding into an AI program like, I'm looking for, a large state university that offers nutrition and public policy that's, in a warm climate. Like, I think it can be used probably as a research tool. So
That sounds like it's coming for your job.
potentially. But see, I'm going to know how to use it,
Exactly.
so it's not going to come
so
from
you're
my
safe.
job.
You worked in your career as I think all of our current college counselors have worked on the other side of the desk. During a part of your career. In other words, you worked in a college admissions office. You were on the other side of all those applications, trying to find the right people for a university. What do you think about their perspective and how AI might change their point of view as they're looking at applications from students from places like Viewpoint all across the country?
Yeah. Well, this is a question that, our entire profession is pondering right now, especially as admission offices are dealing with unprecedented numbers of applications. In fact, we're starting to hear back from colleges at the end of this early round, what the stats are. And I don't know how it happens, but again and again, year over year, apps are up. So I think that my guess is, and there's a lot of speculation about this in the profession, that colleges will find ways to use AI to help them just process these thousands of applications. So, maybe figuring out some sort of algorithm that will give them a group of applicants that they're trying to, maybe more business students or maybe more humanities students. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to use it, but I know that admission offices are really thinking about how they can use it in the work that they have to do, which is so much right now. Like, admission offices are struggling to read all the apps that they have to read.
Boy, it really makes the point that you started with, that this is an area that's changing fast. Mm-hmm. And we should say, like, today, as we're recording this, it's December 1st. Mm-hmm. And at least in a viewpoint context, some 90% of our senior class have filed applications, November 1 deadlines, November 15 deadlines. And we've had some successes from, rolling admissions, but even most of those early applications, we haven't begun to get results yet. So we're talking at a particularly auspicious moment in the cycle as the seniors are preparing their regular deadline applications, right?
Right. Yesterday was the big UC Cal State deadline, November 30th.
Of course, November 30th.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's interesting. One of the other new trends that we're seeing is that, these large state schools, the ESPN schools, we call them.
That was the first time in your article that I had heard that term, ESPN schools. Tell me about the ESPN schools.
Large state schools with vibrant community campuses.
The ones I see on Saturday morning on ESPN, in other words.
Game day. Yeah. One of my favorite things. I wake up at the crack of dawn to watch Game Day every Saturday, which have big, spirited Division I sports programs, ESPN schools.
That's right.
It just kind of is a shorthand for these large public flagship places that do an amazing job of educating kids. They have a huge number of different programs. They have, a ton of clubs. They have research opportunities. They have great athletics. They have, for the most part, really good facilities. And they often have things like really high quality honors colleges, or special certificate programs that, allow students to not just single major and double major, but get maybe a certificate in a different area that is not necessarily their major. So,
have they grown in visibility, popularity among viewpoint students? Which ones do you see growing the most among viewpoint students?
It's interesting. Like Michigan, 8 years ago,
right,
I would say 3/4 of our applicants got into Michigan. It was a great, kind of backup, a great school to have in your back pocket going into the winter, waiting to see the rest of your applications. Places, Colorado, CU Boulder.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that used to be everyone's favorite, likely. I am so nervous this year. We are just seeing, huge numbers of kids applying to Boulder. I think the secret's out on that one.
Well, it's been highly publicized, actually.
Well, Coach Prime.
That's right.
Although, I think their football record isn't necessarily what they had hoped, but, it has shown a lot of light on that school and that program, and it's just a phenomenal opportunity and a great campus. So, I think one of the trends that we're seeing is students could apply to a lot of these Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Oregon, Colorado, and hear back in December. But because of the onslaught of applications, they've now moved the notification dates back to January. So that's made it tough in that you can't get a sense of how a student's application is being read early on that would impact potentially where they would apply during the regular round. So from a strategy point of view, it's really kind of, been hard. It's been a tough thing to adjust to in terms of we always wanted to get a sense of how kids were being read early on so that we could make adjustments for the regular round. But now we don't really have that option because
how might students adapt to that landscape?
Well, I think just discovering new options, right? There are so many great schools out there that I think, I'm thinking of places like the University of Kansas, a fantastic ESPN school, one of the top basketball programs around, but also just an amazing business program, an amazing engineering program, a great Lawrence, Kansas, one of the best college towns in the country. Like, kind of discovering what are some of those other sort of hidden gems that maybe kids in California don't necessarily think of immediately when they're thinking of big state schools.
Every time I come in your office, I think I'm learning about a new college. And it's funny, I've been aware my whole career in K-12 and I've always been reminding students my whole career, there are more than 2,000 colleges and universities in the country. If you think about the ones, if you sat down and named the ones you've heard of, you might come up with a list if you're really good of 100 or 200, but I don't think you'd scratch more than that. Mm-hmm. How have you seen the list change? I think about the list as often it used to feel like it was driven by the U.S. News and World Report list. And we're in a world now where, U.S. News is under pressure. The medical schools, the law schools have begun to drop U.S. News. Like, how do you think about the way, quote unquote, the list has changed for students over the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think because of these huge applicant pools, I think students have had, by necessity to look beyond sort of the big name places. I think as applicant pools have ballooned, admit rates have dropped. So, places that might have been, a target or even a likely, sometimes people call those safety schools, for students for whom schools might have been a target or a likely, not so anymore. So I think just by necessity, they've had to look beyond, the rankings, because that's where a lot of students tend, traditionally a lot of families tend to put a lot of credence in those.
Yeah.
Especially international students who may not have, knowledge beyond that of a bunch of different types of schools in the States. I think there's a lot of emphasis put on the rankings, worldwide. So that has made those applicant pools so huge. So
you did a lot of work a couple years ago, I think, pushing people beyond the rankings. What was that? There was a phrase that you had about the rankings, like, but I about, not being stressed by the rankings. But I know I've been impressed in my time watching our students and their outcomes with how individualized they are and how, our mission statement talks about each individual viewpoint student. And I always look at the list every year. I'm always surprised by it. And yet it always makes sense for each individual viewpoint student, even in the changing times.
Well, our goal is to ensure that students have options. Like, I think there's a pressure that sometimes kids have as they start this phase of the process, like junior year. Like right now, this week we had junior family college night.
That's right. And congratulations on a new junior family college night.
Thank you. I know that's
it's like a new year. It's like a new year.
Exactly. It's a big watershed moment, especially for juniors and their parents. But I think that there's sometimes pressure to I need to choose the college that I'm going to attend now.
That's right.
No, you don't. You have over a year and a half or so before you need to really choose a college to attend. So I think sometimes to underscore to students, you're not choosing something right now. So right now it's about exploring, doing research, reflecting on who you are and what you need. That changes as kids mature, as they work through the rest of junior year. Senior year is a time of enormous growth and change. So I think to underscore the need to you don't have to choose a college right now. Right now it's about creating options. So I think to encourage kids, kind of getting at the question you asked a little bit ago, how have you managed to, deal with the changing nature of selectivity, encouraging kids to sort of think beyond what everyone else is focused on and to really explore, to visit places. We have our East Coast College Tour coming up in the spring, our HBCU tour that we're going to be having in the fall, encouraging kids to visit campuses and to really, think beyond what is the ranking of the school, which is
right.
not a very helpful criteria.
It really doesn't tell you much about the experience you're going to have. And for a junior in the class of 2025, you're right. They won't be choosing their college until 2025,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's an impossibly high number, 2025, but those are
But
our
here
11th,
we are.
those are our 11th graders. And I mean, what is it up to now? I think, a student at Viewpoint, the average last year was applied to some 13 schools. And, the challenge really is to identify a list of places where you could see yourself.
Right.
And I think all of our students can do the research to find a place where they see themselves, to find maybe 10 places where they can see themselves,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Another trend in your article that got my attention was the elimination of race-conscious college admissions. You had a point of view there about the June 2023 Supreme Court ruling that ended the consideration of race as a factor used in college admissions. Can you give us a breakdown of the ruling itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this, but basically, the Supreme Court, after hearing some cases brought against Harvard and UNC Chapel Hill by the Students for Fair Admissions, an interest group that was run by this lawyer, who brought the cases against Harvard and UNC, stating that affirmative action was unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court upheld that in June. So stating basically that for college campuses to use, for admission programs to use race as a factor in admissions was unconstitutional and therefore illegal. So we are entering a whole new era of admission, and it's concerning. So many of us use data as we make decisions, data-driven decision-making, and that is very true in admission offices, like collecting data and using it to help craft the class. And so now with this new ruling, admission offices won't be able to use data as one of the factors. Like race has always been just one of the factors, one of many factors in the admission process, but now that is they're not allowed to use they're not allowed to use data that's linked to race. So students can still talk about their experience with race in their applications, but the hard part is going to be that there's no systemic way that admission offices can really harness that data to help them make decisions. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really, really hard. And that is one of the biggest changes that's happening this year that admission offices are grappling with. So,
Angel Perez, who is our colleague, I think you know him as well, CEO of the National Association for College Admission Counseling, NACAC. Angel predicts that we will see a decline in students of color attending colleges before we see an increase again. What do you think of his take on this?
Well, as the CEO of the organization that represents college admission officials around the country at both colleges and high schools, and as a former admission officer himself from Pitzer College and a variety of other places.
Yeah, he's also in Hartford, right? Trinity, yeah.
Yeah, he was at Trinity. Yeah. I first met him when he was at Claremont McKenna. So he is a very well-respected professional and researcher in our profession. So I think he's probably spot on, because I think as colleges adjust to this new system of not being able to use the race data point, they're going to be struggling to figure out how many kids in the pool are represented by certain races. So I think as colleges try to figure out how to deal with that, we will see a drop in numbers of Black, Latinx students. So students who are historically underrepresented in these applicant pools.
Here in California, certainly our UCs have had a similar policy mandate already. And so you've already
seen... For nearly
seen...
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, you've already seen how this plays out at the UCs.
Yeah.
How does that impact your perspective on this trend?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's frustrating for me is that I think colleges, they are definitely committed to creating diverse student bodies. So they're going to have to throw all kinds of resources, millions of dollars at the issue through recruiting mechanisms, through perhaps special programs that get at trying to diversify their student bodies in the absence of being able to use the data. So, I mean, for me, it's like I think about how expensive college is. Like, and for institutions to have to divert funds to compensate for this issue when those funds could maybe be used for financial aid or different programs. Like,
Other ways of achieving a diverse student body. That's
yeah,
right.
and other ways to like use the money, the precious resources that these institutions have that really impact, everyone's experience on campus. So I don't know. I think we're all just waiting to see what will happen, because after the deposits are made on May 1st, the Common App, for example, will be able to release the race data that they have collected on the application that's just been blocked from college admission officers from reviewing it. So they're collecting the data. They just can't look at it as they're making decisions. But when the big reveal happens later this spring, I think it'll be interesting to see what the numbers really are. So,
So as a practical matter, your counterparts in college admission offices will have a moment after May 1st when they sort of see what the composition is of the class according to those what have historically been, check boxes on an application.
Right, that they've been able to use as a data point in their admission process.
Yeah.
So,
well, it is, as you said, a very fast-moving, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I understand that Students for Fair Admission, now has other schools in sight, and including the academies, and we'll see what
one
happens.
of the things that they did, which is I think really important for everyone to know, is the day after the ruling, they sent a letter to 150 of the top, the most selective private and public colleges around and said, we're watching. And if we see you breaking this law, we're going to sue you. So I think, colleges and universities are also nervous about the money that they're going to have to spend to fight legal battles that this group, SFFA, is going to, the lawsuits that they're going to file. So
clearly resources that could be better deployed educationally.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And I mean, at the same time, we have colleges putting on the table their legacy admission policies, right, and other sorts of preferences are under pressure.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any movement on that?
A little bit. I think colleges and universities are very hesitant to, tinker with that very much, just because it's linked to fundraising.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's, again, stay tuned.
Before we run out of time, let's talk about the trend you were talking about the FAFSA, which is, tell me, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student assistance, is that right? What's the FAFSA?
Free application for federal student aid.
Yes.
The FAFSA.
And so what's the headline about how the federal government is changing the FAFSA?
So one of the things they're doing, which is good, is traditionally the FAFSA has been 100+ questions that families had to answer in order. It's a document that the federal government asks families to do if they are applying for financial aid. And so virtually every college and university requires that if you're applying for aid. So, and it's traditionally been this really, really long, cumbersome document. Over the years, they've attached it to IRS data. So that was a big step forward in that, like, it would link automatically to parents' tax documents once it was filed. So this year they've reduced it to just a little less than 50 questions. So they think it's going to be faster. And they've adjusted the the EFC, the statement of the EFC, which is the estimated family contribution to the student aid index. So they've changed the language a little bit to reflect that this isn't exactly what families are going to pay, but this is what the aid index it could be for students. They've done things like they're not going to give a break for families who have multiple kids in college. That's going away, which is kind of unfortunate for a lot of people who have multiple kids in college. One good thing is you'll be able to list up to 20 schools. Traditionally, it's been 10. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of, mirroring the fact that more kids are applying to more colleges. But the biggest issue is that, it's not going to be ready until the very end of December. So I'm not sure how this is another thing that colleges are having to deal with this year is like, how do they give aid awards to students who are applying in the early round? So I think we'll see delays in financial aid awards. Students won't have all the info they need necessarily, especially early on, to make financial decisions about college. So, we'll see how that goes. The federal government's trying to, roll that out right now, and it's been cumbersome. So.
It's the software's not done yet, is it?
No.
Yeah, I was just hearing about this the other day, and that must be incredibly stressful for, again, the people on the other side of the desk who are managing all that data and trying to come up with information for people.
Yeah. So,
wow. Do you think it will ultimately affect the availability of aid for students in the next year?
Yeah, I do. I think that there will be glitches and errors, as there always are with new platforms. I think there will be maybe a lack of trust in what the awards are. And I think that, colleges will be dealing with appeals probably at a higher rate, aid appeals. And, I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm nervous for our kids who have full need. And quite frankly, those are the kids I worry about the most, the students who need money.
It has become so expensive. And college needs to be a smart financial decision as well as a smart educational decision for all families.
Absolutely.
I know we'll have future episodes. I look forward to meeting some of the people in your office. In terms of your article on trends, anything we haven't covered that you want to highlight?
I just think the one thing that I always like to say is that one of the reasons why I love doing college counseling, especially at Viewpoint, is that we have a chance to really work individually with kids and families. And I really want people to understand that they can come to us, they can work with us. We will help them with their individual needs and goals. And we are always doing our homework. We are trying so hard to stay on top of all the new changes that happen every year. It's, again, part of why I do this work. I think it's really fun and interesting, and it's never the same. The one thing that is the same, though, is our commitment to helping kids and families find the right place. So.
Wow, I so appreciate that. I have to tell you, the optimism in our students is also enduring, and I know that I've been admiring the college counseling office philosophy for years as we embraced our mission of world readiness, of exceptional readiness for extraordinary futures. It is so aligned with the philosophy and the way that you and your colleagues work with our students. I couldn't be happier. And in fact, I think we look forward to meeting your colleague or colleagues in a future episode, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we're always happy to talk about our program and promote it. And you're absolutely right. Every aspect of it is designed to help kids be world ready.
Well, I know that every year I look at the outcomes from the office and I say that is what World Ready looks like, in the words of last year's salutatorian. And in our next episode, in fact, our newest assistant director of college counseling, Tanaz Nourian, who comes to us from Chapman College, her alma mater, will join us to continue talking about trends.
Yeah. We look forward to it. Thanks, Mark.
Rhody, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for listening. This is On Point, College Conversations, and we'll see you in January.
On Point is produced by Viewpoint School, an independent school in Calabasas, California, serving students in grades TK through 12. You also can find the On Point podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Viewpoint School channel on YouTube, and at viewpoint.org/onpoint.